Well, that was weird. Normally by the second viewing, accompanied by a ton of notes, I have a decent idea of whether I like an episode or not. But this week had me all over the place. Some bits were hilarious with some great themes thrown around, but some of it was just making me want to pull my hair out. You could say that I'm faced with a conundrum myself. Now that we're at the halfway point in the series, I can at least say with some certainty that I am gonna stick it out until the very end. I know some of you have already given up on the show by this point, and by 2 of the episodes already, I don't blame you at all. But maybe I'm just one of these half glass full type of guys. The potential for it to be good is definitely there, but I think hope can only get me so far. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at the TSURANGA Conundrum and see if there's anything salvageable from within. The episode kicks off with the Doctor and friends doing a bit of metal detecting on a garbage planet. Although we don't linger here long, I'm once again glad the Doctor isn't giving her new friends a guided tour of the universe. Instead, they're doing something practical, even if it amounts to nothing, but they come across a sonic mine, which kinda reminded me of the opening of Genesis of the Daleks. The only difference is that in the modern era, the Doctor doesn't really seem to care about their proximity to it. I was surprised that she was so distracted with gathering information on it that she didn't bother telling any of them to back off or even tell them what it is until it's too late. Fortunately, they are revived on what I'll call a space ambulance, which was a nice idea. Hospitals are a favourite location for our main protagonist, and I began to wonder if it was going to be a hospital in space, but the size of the ship was made clear before they established that it's just a transporter for patients. This also adds a bit of claustrophobia into the mix, with the addition of the handy trope of being trapped inside a base that commonly makes decent episodes of the show. This is certainly apparent later when the monster eats the sonic screwdriver, preventing it from working. Having said that, the screwdriver reboots itself later on anyway, so why they bothered removing this device from the plot in the first place baffled me. The episode touched on themes of automation, which I thought was nice, seeing as we are definitely headed towards more technologically oriented methods of administering medicine, and to wonder about the extent of this creates some very interesting plot points. There was the 3 dismissals and the whole ship blowing itself up thing, which made me consider whether this outer space health service was really that passionate about curing the sick or just cutting costs. This concept did get quite silly towards the end though, seeing as the bomb could be removed from a drawer and didn't activate when it should have done. So why didn't any of the staff throw it out of the airlock on day 1? Likewise, we also have the android named Ronan, who was too busy being the general's nanny instead of helping everyone. This is once again a compliment laced with criticism though, as I feel this was a missed opportunity for character development, and even a showdown between the robot and the cute CGI monster might have made for good entertainment. What did make for good entertainment, however, was the opening 15 minutes. I liked that the Doctor got a bit of a telling off for her recklessness from the character Astos. The look on her face when she's thinking, "Oh my god, I'm actually being a nuisance, aren't I? I think I need a cup of tea." Unfortunately, she forgets this later on when she took her doctorate joke a bit too far. It was really funny when she started reeling off the silly degrees she has in candy floss and Lego, but problems, people, and hope? Nah, come on, you're just taking the mick now, aren't you? The Pating smashes its way into the ship and they have 2 areas that need investigating. Unfortunately, Astos's duty of care seems to fly out of the airlock after this though. It was surprising to learn that this ship wasn't rigged with CCTV, resulting in the need for the Doctor and Astos to be sent down to what could potentially be the most dangerous part of the ship.
Why am I trusting you, Doctor?
Because the plot requires it, old boy. Then they kill him off at the 15-minute mark, which had me initially thinking, okay, they're really pulling out the punches this week. But he was the only casualty of the alien invader. I'm kind of reminded of Ridley Scott's film Alien, but to compare this episode to that would be almost insulting. I was secretly keeping my fingers crossed that the others would get picked off one by one, but a whole lot of nothing happens instead. So we are left with 1 member of the crew remaining, Mabley. They put very little effort into establishing who she was. I can think of only 1 word to describe her, and that is newbie. What else is there that makes this character unique or interesting? She just looks like a hipster who finally realized she was useless at everything else in life and devoted herself to helping others. Even if this was the case though, nothing of this nature bubbles to the surface whatsoever. As for the companions this week, it saddened me because they just sort of disappeared. I know you can't give them all screen time all the time, but I don't think we're connecting with them in ways that we should. Most of the time, they just have random comments on the situation and run along whilst the Doctor sorts everything out. It would be nice if this manifested itself as some type of burden on the Doctor, as it would flip the Doctor hates being lonely theme or cliche on its head and strive towards making this incarnation a bit more unique.
I think that's staff only.
Wait, hang on, you can read that? You don't exactly have the TARDIS with you to translate this. And weren't you guys complaining not 2 minutes ago that there weren't any signs on this ship? Also, Graham, I really do love you with all my heart, but have you heard yourself lately?
Generally, truth is always your best option.
Oh, she's lying to me.
She might have good reason for that.
Anyway, moving on to the other two. It felt very odd when Yaz started to interrogate Ryan over his parents. I suppose she's curious, coming from a traditional nuclear family, but simultaneously she doesn't have an inch of sympathy for him until after the fact, and just blasts questions his way. Why aren't you two panicking for your lives right now? The whole ship could get eaten any minute now, and you're asking him about how his mum died? She does eventually muster up some emotion towards him and says this.
Ryan, I'm so sorry. I never knew.
Duh, otherwise why would you be asking? I have to say though, the segments with Yos, the pregnant male, were some of the funniest parts of the story. I always love these types of characters who are so oblivious to the danger around them because they have some huge problem of their own to contend with. I'm not sure how I feel about him being an alien because, like several others this series, he looks very human. I'll concede that the ridiculous nature of his situation grants him a seal of approval from me though, as it was very creative and stood out like a shining beacon of hope amongst the rest of the garbage in this story. I also found Graham and Ryan's assistance with delivering the baby to be the best part of this very strange episode. It was great how it escalated from fulfilling this tradition of having two men supporting the delivery to Yos having a mood swing a little later when he's screaming, "Where do you know me from? Where do you know me from?" to these two strangers in the room with him. Graham's love for Call the Midwife and looking away at the squeamish bits had me in stitches, and I was happy that Ryan was using his own personal experience to not only reassure Yos but also convince him to give being a father a try. As much as Yaz ruined Ryan's revealing of his family troubles, it's nice that he's having some development here. He's more fleshed out than he was, even if most of it has been through dialogue, but I'm really confused about this fist bump situation he and Graham have going on. Why do you have to go and spoil things, Ryan? Ugh, maybe they're saving it for the finale or something. We'll see. Right, I've had enough of humanity for the time being. Let's talk about the monster. Puting. What a stupid name. It's like they just made it up on the spot. There's no meaning behind the name, and turns out all it wanted was, energy. Doesn't every form of life we know of run on some form of energy? This is such a terribly simple motivation for our antagonist. Out of the 5 episodes we've seen thus far, the only decent monster that's shown up is the bloody Tooth Fairy from the pilot! At least he looked cool, and even the spiders last week looked alright. Pating, however, looks like he was animated by an amateur. I reckon they had an intern working at the BBC and were like, "Hey, what's your name again?" Kai. Oh, hello, Kai. Fancy coming up to the office with me? Oh god, I'm not getting fired, am I? No, we've just had an overview of the budget, and it looks like we can't afford to hire somebody to animate one of our episodes, so would you mind pitching in for the team and helping us out? Well, I've not done nothing like that before, so I'm glad you're enthusiastic. We'll see you on Monday. Even though it looked like trash, we barely saw the thing at all, meaning that we don't learn what puting is by dint of it just wreaking havoc. We instead learn about it from expository dialogue. Yep, we're back to this issue that has plagued this entire series so far. We have both the general and the computer explaining to us basically everything we already know about it. It's supposed to be dangerous and scary, but it's animated to look cute, so I really don't know who the showrunners think they're fooling. In the antimatter drive room, we have some more dialogue that makes me want to claw my eyes out.
Oh, I did a bit on antimatter at school.
Never quite understood it.
What was the point in even saying this? What a waste of a line. Then we had this massive science lesson from the Doctor to explain how antimatter is powering the ship or something. The layman audience that watch this show aren't going to have a clue what you're talking about. If there was some way of explaining all of this visually, that would have been great. Instead, it's just close-ups on the Doctor's face and hands as she tries to explain a bit of quantum physics to us. I found it quite annoying as well that they can shove this scientific lecture down our throats whilst also making up names for diseases. Corton's fever? Pilot's heart? When we return to this room later, Yaz has teamed up with Ronan to hunt down the relentless killing machine. When did Yaz even establish that she wanted to pick up a random blaster and stun the monster? I could be wrong, I wouldn't be surprised to find my mind turning to mush at this point, but I seem to recall her suddenly being in the control room for no established reason. Then the Doctor comes along after they've kicked Pating down the corridor. As though that moment wasn't cringy enough, it's basically made apparent that the pair have been sitting around twiddling their thumbs after doing so. The robot himself said that the stun only lasts a few seconds, and they couldn't be bothered to keep an eye on it at least. There's a perfectly good airlock there too, guys. Neither of you thought to jettison it there and then? Well, that exact thing happens anyway, but it's the Doctor who strikes the final blow. I know I mentioned it earlier, but if I was the Doctor, I'd be super annoyed right now for once again doing all the work. So much for Team TARDIS. We leave this week's episode with some weird song to round it off. For the third week in a row, we have to sit through some silly song. Earlier, the Doctor was complaining that she didn't know enough about the 67th century, but thank God she knows this chant that she can just join in on with the rest of them. I was just sitting there waiting to see the confused faces of Yaz, Ryan, and Graham looking bewildered by what's taking place right here. But then again, if I could just hold up a mirror to my face whilst watching this, it would probably be exactly the same as theirs. I guess I just need a little imagination. So, did it suck? To say this one's a mixed bag is an understatement. There are so many great things packed in here. The themes, the setting, and the pregnant alien were enough to make it watchable at the very least. But it is simultaneously plagued with everything that has sucked about this series thus far. The overuse of dialogue and the monster were the main problems, but the lack of character and common sense makes this a bit of a train wreck at the end of the day. I give the TSURANGA Conundrum, glad I don't have to say that phrase ever again, a 4 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Looks like we're back to tackling harder subject matters next week, which I'm very happy about. You guys looking forward to it? Leave me a comment below or come and join the Discord server where we have live discussions of each episode every Sunday night. I'll see you all there.
It could have been a lot better. It was very routine, running up and down corridors and silly monsters.